Jill Lamont, thank you for joining us at the 2025 Illinois School Safety Conference. Talk about your role in education, where you are now, and why you decided to come here today.
I'm so thrilled to be here. I welcome any opportunity to be in a room full of people who are all committed to the same goal of keeping our students and our environments where we teach and learn safer. Currently, I'm in a role at Evolve Technology. I'm their Vice President of Education. But prior to this job, I was an educational professional in Oxford Community Schools. And during and after the horrific event on November 30th, 2021, where 4 students were taken from us and 7 others were injured. And that experience, that horrible tragedy, led me to really being driven to this mission. And this conference is just one opportunity to be with other mission-driven professionals to try and get better together.
What is the main message you'd like to get out today, speaking not only to this room of administrators, public safety officers, technology vendors, but also the general public?
Certainly. I think that very often we get into our own work. We focus on those things that we are most passionate about, which is important to us, and we get blinders on, right? And that cannot happen when it comes to school safety. We have to have our law enforcement professionals working side by side, hand in hand with our education professionals, with our parent community, with our students, and with our educators themselves to all work together to come up with comprehensive safety plans that are actionable, not just something that lives in a binder or is laminated somewhere on a shelf, but something that we can live into to keep ourselves safer.
Jill, would you mind sharing what happened that day, the immediate aftermath, and how your school community got through it?
Yeah, absolutely. The resilience of the students. Actually, I would say students certainly led the way, both during the tragedy with regards to how many heroes were in the building that day, how many children responded in a way that was absolutely heroic. I feel like those stories have not all been told yet, and they should be. Plenty of staff members who just knew what to do and really sacrificed their own safety for the benefit of others and for students. And then in the aftermath, that recovery time and that process, I think I mentioned students really led the way. We had to listen to the kids. They're much more resilient than the adults. And thankfully, we had strong student leadership in our community to help us learn what we needed to do to make them feel safer. And of course, working with our law enforcement and our parent community to see how to actually make them physically more secure.
And when you heard about the shooting at the Minneapolis school last month, what went through your mind?
Yeah, every time these shootings occur, which is far too frequently and too often, I'm also a parent of 4 little ones, and I happen to be a law enforcement spouse. So I'm seeing these incidents from a variety of different angles and different perspectives, and it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see, and of course, because it's all preventable. And knowing what we know now, it's easy to look at other incidents and say they could have been prevented, but what can we do to be proactive in that prevention space? A lot of safety and security training is on response, and I think that's incredibly important. Thank goodness we had that type of training in Oxford. It was able to mitigate the tragedy. It was able to save many lives that day. But prevention is really where the majority of focus needs to be. Also on response, but prevention is really important. And what kind of preventative work can you be doing in your districts, whether you are a parent, an educational professional, a law enforcement professional, or a student? What can you do to raise your voice and make your spaces safer?
I don't know if you can share any answers right now, but what could a teacher take away from that? What should they be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the teacher voice, the educator, paraprofessional, food service worker, those individuals who know our buildings and our student body the best are often absent from the safety conversation, probably because of scheduling conflicts, and maybe sometimes we want to spare them that responsibility because of all the other great things that they're doing. But that voice is imperative when we're talking about safety planning. What do they know that we don't know? They know the students better than anyone else could. And then certainly the students who know one another. Where is the student voice in safety planning? Are students invited to safety meetings? Are they able to talk about their fears, their anxieties, and their solutions? We should be letting them lead the way.
Jill Lamont, thank you very much for joining us at the 2025 Illinois School Safety Conference.
Thank you for having me.
We're joined now by retired First Sergeant Matt Eversman of the U.S. Army. Sergeant Eversman, thank you very much for joining us here at the School Safety Conference. You are one of our keynote speakers this afternoon. Why did you choose to attend today?
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure and truly an honor to be here, and especially just listening a little bit this morning about the topic. And the topic's a big one. Everybody here knows this is not a could happen, might happen, should be something out of the, on the far right or left of a bell curve. This is part of American society that we have to deal with. And that's a big deal. This is good versus evil kind of stuff. And to land the whole the whole plane here, to be here and share a little bit of my experience, as a young leader on a battlefield, on a distant shore, in a terrible time when everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. And yet we were able to persevere, drive through that moment, that critical moment when everything, all hope is lost, and yet still get through and sort of accomplish this mission. Well, I think there's something in there that hopefully I could share with the audience that are dealing with these battles in the future.
And Sergeant, just for our listeners, you were part of the Battle of Mogadishu in the early 1990s. Like you said, things went wrong. You had to figure a way out. And school tragedies still happen. Officers find themselves in the situation. Educators find themselves in that situation. Is there any advice you can give? How can you prepare for something like this?
Well, and this is just one guy's observation, but I think you can. And when I say you can prepare for this, we're all going to be faced with this one moment, this one critical moment in our lives, and could be personally, could be professionally, but something's going to lead us all to a moment where we're literally running to the sound of gunfire or running away. And what we do to prepare ourselves for that critical piece, and again, industry agnostic, crisis agnostic, we need to challenge ourselves to be those people that are going to take action, to be literally moving forward towards these threats. And again, literal or figurative, I just personally think we can. Because if we don't give it a shot, if we don't try and prepare ourselves for this absolute diabolical worst case scenario, then we literally are going to be sitting ducks, and that's inexcusable.
What is the takeaway message you'd like to leave this room full of public safety officers? You have school administrators here, you have technology vendors, and just the general public.
Yeah, listen, fantastic question, because I think in this day and age, it's easy to beat up on somebody. It's easy to pin the tail of blame on somebody, particularly in a tragedy like a school shooting, or anything that's dealing with these innocent children. It's so easy for us to say, hope is lost, things can't work, we're mired in bureaucracy, we're blah, 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 all these horrible things. But I would challenge you and say, we have incredibly gifted and talented and brave and not timid at all men and women across this great country that are doing so much for not only the education of our children, but the protection and the safety, of our kids. And we can never forget that. We've got such incredible, brave men and women that are on these schools day in, day out, every single day, taking care of these kids. And that's not just trying to be a bravado cheerleader. I think it's like, we got to remember these are great people next door that are still committed to winning every day. And we've got to remind ourselves that too.
And there's a lot of emphasis, in addition to being prepared for something like this and reacting, it's making sure it doesn't happen in the first place. That means being more empathetic to the kids in the classroom, understanding what they might be going through, and just being a presence at school. Why is that important?
Well, golly, man, you drill in on this one and put a quarter in me, I won't shut up. I think that, we've got to start also, even beyond that, before these children get to school, what's going on at home, what's going on in our communities, these concentric circles of influence, on our children. And a lot of times I think it's negative. And listen, I'm no expert, I'm just one guy taking a peek from the outside, but I think that, we've got to be engaged with these children all the way, from the moment they arrive in this great earth of ours till, the time we leave. They've got to be loved, they've got to be nourished, they've got to be disciplined, they've got to be, kind of all takes a village kind of piece of it. Not to sound cliche, but I think that we've got to, and we can, or I should say, I believe we could collectively do better at engaging with these children. And again, there's drive a horse and buggy through that comment, but I think we just have to commit ourselves to being engaged and continually, doing the right thing and saying no, saying yes, attaboys and attagirls to, stand in the corner kind of stuff. We've got to do it all, and we can do it better.
For Sergeant Matt Eversman, U.S. Army retired, we'll go ahead and let you go, get ready for your afternoon session. Thank you for taking time to speak to us and the viewers of the 2025 Illinois School Safety Conference. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right, well, welcome back to the third interview of our 2025 Illinois School Safety Conference interview session. We're joined now by Michelle Gay. She's the founder and executive director of Safe and Sound Schools. Michelle, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you are in the Chicago suburbs today, speaking to a room of about 800 public safety officers, school administrators, vendors, people who have a stake in the school safety. So why did you decide to come here today?
Wow. So this is probably my third or fourth time at this amazing conference. It's one of my favorites. It's very multidisciplinary, which is one of the things that we're most passionate about at Safe and Sound Schools. My background is originally as an educator. Of course, I'm a parent also. I'm a parent also who lost one of her 3 daughters in the Sandy Hook school tragedy. So I come at this from a variety of different lenses, very personal as well as professional, but to be able to gather with a group of this size and with this much depth and breadth, to bring to the work of school safety is very energizing. So it's always a pleasure to be with this group at this conference, sharing ideas, networking, watching people get creative and get inspired about how we move the needle in school safety.
When you hear about another tragedy that happens, not again, that goes through our minds.
Yeah.
What do you think about, and what do you hope happens?
So the first thing that happens in my mind and my heart is just kind of this transportation back in time. It inevitably brings me back to the feelings and the thoughts and the sounds and the smells of those moments for me and for my family. And kind of breaks my heart for the folks who are now just kind of freshly experiencing a level of heartbreak that is not describable, honestly. Knowing that it's a long journey and they're only just beginning, it feels especially heavy, for them, for their families, for the community, for students and staff. So it does sort of take you out of commission for a while. And I have learned to just accept that and sit with that and then get back to work and reconnect with folks, learn what we can from the particular crisis, support however we can. We are blessed and privileged to be able to support a lot of communities in the aftermath of a tragedy, whether it's violence or natural disaster or what have you. Our schools are dealing with a lot these days. So it really does take a vast network locally, regionally, and nationally to really support our schools before, during, and after a crisis. So many things, but I think it points to the importance of a gathering like this. We need to keep each other buoyed. We need to keep each other energized, excited, and passionate about this really important work of keeping our schools safe and sound.
You hit on it right there. There's the law enforcement aspect of how to respond. There's the educator aspect of how to be present in the kids' lives. And then there's the aspect of, hey, we need to keep this top of mind. And just talk more about why it's so important to never forget.
It is so important to never forget. And I know that there's no chance of that in this room. Everyone here is just so dedicated and passionate. The challenge is when we go back to our communities, we're all very busy. We all have kind of competing priorities and budgets and so on and so forth. So to really kind of galvanize one another, this mission, and then bring that back and plant more seeds and foster and nourish that in our communities is so incredibly important, because that complacency is just so dangerous. We've seen tragic effects of complacency or a mindset that it can't happen here. And then in contrast, today we have explored events, incidents where, where people were ready, where they were prepared, where they had taken initiative and worked really together in a multidisciplinary fashion, looking at safety from all different angles as a true team. And what a difference that can make, the lives that it can save, the impact it can reduce. We still have an act of violence that changes your community forever, but it doesn't necessarily have the depth or the impact that some of these perpetrators are intending.
All right, you've been listening to Michelle Gay, founder and executive director of Safe and Sound Schools. Michelle, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, we are back with our interview portion of the 2025 Illinois School Safety Conference. We are joined by Lori Alhadeff, parent of a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School student. Lori, thank you very much for joining us to talk to us and for attending our safety conference today. Could you talk about the main reason why you decided to share your story in front of this room?
So my daughter Alyssa was one of the victims at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School on Valentine's Day in 2018. So it's so important for me to help to keep Alyssa's legacy alive, but also help to make sure that the mistakes that happened in our shooting, that they don't happen again. And so it's so important that I continue to tell my story and help to create safer schools.
Could you share us a little bit about your daughter? What type of a teenager was she, and how you're keeping her memory alive?
Alyssa was so beautiful. She loved to play soccer. She wore the number 8 on her soccer jersey. And we turned in our logo, Make Our School Safe, we turned the 8 sideways, which is the infinity symbol, which means forever. So we forever want to remember Alyssa and help to keep her legacy alive.
If you can talk about the aftermath and the questions that were raised and why you decided to do what you're doing now, what particularly stood out as far as response to what happened and what could have improved?
So there was a terrible response. The SRO never went into the building. And so Make Our School Safe, we focus on emergency response. Time equals life. We know the faster that we can get help on the scene, more lives will be saved. So through Alyssa's Law, which is a panic button that the teacher can wear around their neck, so they can use it in a staff assist or medical emergency or active shooter. And we know once that panic button is pressed, it goes to law enforcement, to the PSAPs. And so it's mass notification in that life-threatening emergency situation. And we can get help on the scene as quickly as possible. And then also that we know that people can go into their emergency response protocols, and then more lives will be saved that day.
You have a room of hundreds of public safety officers here in Illinois and school administrators. What's that main message you'd like to get out to them?
So your voice is your power, and that you can make such an impact and make a difference. We have MOS clubs, student-led safety clubs in high schools where students help to create that culture of safety within their school. So start a MOS club at your school and we can really make change. The students really know what's going on their Snapchat and their social media, and they see something, say something, and we can prevent violence from happening before it happens.
And do you speak at other events like this across the country?
Yes.
What is the feedback you get? Do people soak it in?
I mean, absolutely. You know, it's so horrific to hear my story, to hear that my daughter Alyssa was shot 8 times in her English classroom, and know that I'm here and trying to make change and make an impact. You know, I could be in bed crying right now, but instead I'm here to try to bring Alyssa's Law, MOS clubs to the forefront here so that we can make an impact and change and create safer schools.
Lori Alhadeff, parent of a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School student, thank you very much for joining us for this interview and attending the School Safety Conference.
Thank you so much.
All right, welcome back to the next interview of the 2025 Illinois School Safety Conference. Now we're joined by Commander Scott Bird of the Metropolitan Police Department of Nashville and Davidson County. He's here today to talk about lessons learned on preparation and training and response from the Covenant school shooting. Commander Bird, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, be able to help.
Thank you. You have a room full of many people who are in the same profession as you, law enforcement officers, first responders, and we also have a lot of school administrators, IT, transportation, assistant superintendents. What is that message you'd like to get across to them today?
School safety is a team sport. When we get to looking at public safety, much like in public safety, police, fire, Public safety is a team sport. All those folks are coming together with the interest of community at the center of what it is that we're looking to do with response. When we get to looking at school safety, it doesn't get to changing. We just are adding additional players to that equation. So again, being able to have school administrators, police, fire, being able to come together, to be able to get to helping advance school safety is part of what this conference is, and in conferences that get to taking place across the country. Love to see it, and we are excited to be a part of maybe providing some little bit of information that might be able to help folks to be able to get to taking steps to help them to be better prepared.
And sir, your department responded to an incident that happened relatively recently. Could you walk us through what went through your mind when that call came that something was going on at the Covenant School?
So it's a call on the radio that you hope and you pray is never real. And as the call for service on the radio started to play out, you started to understand very quickly that we were dealing with something that was real. It wasn't a hoax or a fake call. Responding to the scene, knowing that I had tools to be able to get to helping support what that response was going to be. Just looking to get there to be able to get to helping provide support to the incident commander that was already there, and then being able to arrive and be able to lay out that pre-built command structure that I talk about when I get to presenting, allowed us to be able to get resources online faster, be able to help us to be able to get to managing that response more effectively and efficiently. In that respect, it got to helping how it is that would end up playing out, both in the short term and the long term.
Are you able to practice for something like this, to rehearse? How difficult is it when it actually happens to remember what you practiced?
Absolutely. So again, our agency is one that has recognized from 25 years ago when I first came onto the police department that an active killer response was something that was important and was something that needed to be trained to all of our personnel. So that is something that gets to continuing today for every recruit class that gets to being a part of our police academy experience. But then our police department also takes it a step further in that we continue to talk about active killer training as part of our annual in-service training that we get to doing every year. So there's an aspect of active killer that our police department gets to training, which allows us to be able to keep that at the forefront of thinking with respect to tools available to officers to be able to get to responding. The ability to be able to get to exercising in a greater sense the command and control structure pieces, that takes partnerships. And the partnerships that our police department has with our fire department and with our schools is tremendous, allowing us the ability to be able to sit in a room, to be able to get to talking through these things, be able to develop and build protocols, and then be able to get to testing them, whether that be in conversations, tabletop exercises, or exercises that are bigger than that. Again, affording the players that are going to be on the field, if that eventuality gets to presenting itself, to be able to be in place to get to practicing it and have a frame of reference that they can get to drawing from should the emergency ever get to happening for real.
And after the tragedy ended, the incident ended, what was the biggest takeaway? What did you look back on and said, you know what, we did this right?
So there are aspects that we got to looking at that we were thankful that we had done. Pre-built command structures were one of the things that got to helping us in our incident there. The relationships that we had built, the conversations that we had had prior to the incident as to how something like that would work was extremely helpful. But we also had lessons learned, things that will allow us to get to improving how it is we get to responding both as first responders and to be able to get to helping schools with how it is they get to managing things like the fire alarm. In our incident, the fire alarm was activated. Being able to work in partnership with the police, fire, and schools to be able to develop protocols for how it is we handle fire alarms so that we can get to effectively evacuating a school if there is a fire, while at the same time minimizing the exposure to hazards that students would get to experiencing.
And finally, sir, if we can just talk about the importance of working ahead of time to develop that relationship with the community and the school. Communications is a big thing. If this happens, we need this ready to say. We need to be on the same page if we send out a social media alert or a press release. Why is that so crucial?
Yeah, it's important. You know, I get to talk about that there's 3 levels of communication that one needs to get to considering when we're dealing with a critical incident like that. One is the communication piece with respect to first responders. How are we going to get to talking to each other? Do we have those systems in place that allow us to be able to talk to each other effectively, to be able to get to working through the emergency that we're dealing with. Then there's the communication piece that goes to stakeholders. In our case, the stakeholders are family members of students, what it is that we're sharing with students, what it is we're sharing with other first responders who are maybe not on duty but are wanting to get to coming in and get to providing support. How does that look? What does that look like? Being able to have those communications plans in place are fantastic. And then there's how it is we get to communicating with the world. What information we get to sharing with folks outside of the incident, those folks who get to taking our story and sharing it with everybody in the world. And it's very important to ensure that everybody's messaging is consistent and that it's clear. Making sure that we get facts and that information out quickly is something that our police department does an incredible job doing. Our public information office and Don Aaron and his team do an incredible job with that. And I think because of that, we're able to get facts pushed out effectively and quickly. And we're able to get short-circuiting or cutting down on misinformation or information that was not correct in association with our emergency incident.
Communication is one of those big keys. Thank you very much, Commander Scott Byrd of the Metropolitan Police Department of Nashville and Davidson County, sharing lessons learned on preparation and training and response from the Covenant School shooting. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
And we are back with our final interview of the 2025 Illinois School Safety Conference. This is Paul Tim, one of the organizers. Paul, thank you very much. You represent Allegiant, where you are the Director of Education and Safety. Wow, I see more people here than I have in years past, and I saw a lot of people in years past. We have upwards of around 750, 800 people?
Yes, 800, and we've had some walk-ups today, and we live in a day where violence feels like it's commonplace, and that really motivates people. Fear motivates people, and we have people who are presenting today who have answers, who have resources, nuts and bolts and strategies, and that I think is the biggest draw.
A lot of people from across the country, a lot of people from Illinois. What is that main message this year? Is it a new technology that's out there, or is it always keep this top of mind? What do you want people to walk away with?
I think, first of all, collaboration is a main emphasis. People are talking about teamwork. That's always a main emphasis, but more and more we realize I've got to I'm a teacher, I'm a social worker, I'm a custodian. I have to make a personal investment in the safety program. I think that's one thing, and then the next thing is preparedness, emergency preparedness. It changes everything. It helps us avert incidents, but if we have an incident, God forbid, we know exactly what we're supposed to do, or at least have guidelines to head down that road.
What's it been like for you and Randy Braverman, your partner organizing this event for the past 20 years, to keep it fresh, to keep it going, to attract new and different sponsors? What's that been like for you?
I would say it's part of our relationship building. We know people in the state who can help people in the state, and we also know there are people on the national scene who would be willing to come in and help people here in Illinois. And when you can put people together, there's always going to be a demand. Otherwise, people are coming to a conference and they say, that was a nice conference, but it's very different to go to a conference and say, I have takeaways, I can make changes, I can pursue initiatives.
Moving forward, people want to say, hey, you know what, I want to attend or I want to be a sponsor. What are the steps that they should take?
Well, you can always contact us. West 40, of course, is organizing everything. The state of Illinois, at almost every agency that has to do with safety, is engaged. People can point people in the right direction. You won't have to look very far to see how you can be involved.
Paul Tim, one of the organizers of the 2025 Illinois School Safety Conference, also the Director of Education and Safety for Allegiant. Paul, thank you.
Thank you.
Randy Braverman, our final interview of the 2025 Illinois School Safety Conference interview portion of the live stream. Thank you very much. 20 years, wow.
Yes.
Talk about what it means to you to reach that milestone.
Well, I never thought this was going to go 20 years, to be honest with you, Chris. When we first started 1 year, we thought maybe we'd make it a year or two, but it just grew and grew and grew, and more people, all the different agencies really wanted to be part of it to a point that we have about 20 different agencies being involved with this Illinois School Safety Conference. And we had today 800 people attend, one of our best showings out, and we have 44 vendors that really contribute to school safety and make sure that we could get money to do this Illinois School Safety Conference.
Hundreds of people in the audience, and some very dynamic keynote speakers, including Commander Scott Bird of the Nashville Police Department, sharing his story of the Covenant School shooting. And this afternoon, guests here in attendance will be able to listen to Sergeant Matt Eversman, retired U.S. Army, who was featured in the movie and the book Black Hawk Down.
Yes.
Here to talk about how that experience kind of shapes how schools can be protected. What is it like for you to listen to the keynote speakers share their stories?
Well, I think you get an insight of what they're experiencing, how they handle the situation, especially mentally. There's a lot of issues going through an active shooter and mentally coping with it after the fact, because we have some issues with people that have committed suicide because of active shooters in the past, because they can't handle the whole situation. But it's great to hear these people, how they did things, how they work with their people that are dealing with police officers or soldiers after the fact.
And moving forward, where does the future take the Illinois School Safety Conference? Are you excited to keep it going?
We are going to keep it going. I thought after 20 years maybe we'll say it's done, but it's not, because we're thinking maybe to go to Rosemont Convention Center because it's bigger. We have 800 people. We're kind of outgrow with this place. We're going to have to maybe hopefully next year get 1,000. So we need a much bigger venue. And we have a lot more vendors that want to participate to be involved with our School Safety Conference.
And we couldn't do it without the vendors and the sponsors.
That's correct, because they support our conference, because that money goes directly to the conference, so we can have free food for them, free speakers that we could pay for them, and that's really part of how our conference is run.
Conference organizer Randy Braverman, West 40 team member Randy Braverman, thank you very much.
Thank you much, Chris.